Welcome to Design to Sell, the podcast where interior design and real estate development come together to create spaces that move markets. I'm Caitlin, your host, here to share the strategies behind designs that don't just look good, they sell. Hi there, and we are back from summer vacation. Thank you so much for joining Design to Sell. I'm Caitlin, your host. So, as everybody knows right now, what's going on in the market, we're kind of having a weird churn. It's not really quite a buyer's market, but it's also not a seller's market at all. I think we are getting back to kind of a healthy market, which is good. There's more inventory, but it's not always great for investors. On today's episode, I wanted to talk about designing in a downturn. This is so important for investors and designers to really fully understand, because what happens is as houses sit a little bit longer, that means you have to start factoring in longer holding costs. So where, the last 5-6 years, houses were selling within a week, now we're seeing houses aren't selling for 30, 60, 90, and even in some states, 120 days. So they are definitely sitting. So in order to combat that, we need to make sure that we as investors are designing for profit. Remember, that's my biggest thing, guys. Always, always, always design for profit and for your market. So right now, our market is at a kind of interesting standstill. I think a big portion of the reason for this is because of the fact that the Fed keeps saying that they're going to lower interest rates. I think a lot of people are very unsure about what's going on with tariffs. Also, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really fully understand everything behind the tariffs and behind the Fed and all of that. So I think that there's a lot of scarcity in the market right now. People are kind of holding off. The buyers are still there, but I think they are a little anxious to jump right away on something. So why does it matter when we're designing in a downturn? Why does design still matter for that? Well, as we know, in every market, first impressions matter. Designing in a downturn, first impressions matter even more. When buyers pull up to a house, they're already feeling, are they emotionally attached to this home? If they aren't emotionally attached to this home, the second they pull up, then they're going to leave. So even more so when you're designing in a downturn, you want to make sure that curb appeal is on point. Give them something to talk about. You want them to fall in love with it. You want them to want to go inside and already start pulling on those heartstrings of them visualizing their family there. So making those right decisions for your property is crucial. Add those extra plants, add those extra flowers, make that walkway up to the house feel special. Now, how are we going to go from the exterior to the interior of making sure that we are still designing a home that is gorgeous and has all those design elements that we can do when the market is skyrocketing because we have the budget for it? But what do we do when we don't have the budget for it? Here are some things that you can do to save. So as I said before, always secondary spaces are the easiest way to save. So for example, the kids' bath, the kids' bedrooms, the guest rooms, those areas, even bonus rooms or things like that, those areas you can kind of really pull back on your budget, not adding as many cool elements. Again, this goes to using the $1.50 a square foot tile in the secondary bathrooms and changing it up with how you lay it versus spending more money on the actual tile itself. Uh, Tile itself, that price, it really can add up quickly. So you really want to make sure that you have your budget to a T. Make sure that any bathrooms that are not the primary, you are not overspending. You're spending $1.50 on tile. That's including shower, flooring. You're buying the pre-built vanities. You are going to Home Depot or maybe the consignment shops for mirrors. And then lighting, again, you're looking on Wayfair, Amazon, those places that still can give you a little bit of that pow, but it's budget friendly. So those are really the spaces you're going to want to be able to save on. Switching from doing maybe a lime wash on a wall versus plaster or a wood accent wall. That's another great way to kind of save on your budget, but still give a design a wow feature. Places you're going to want to invest in. Again, curb appeal. You're going to want to invest in those plants, the artificial grass, the walkway pulling up to the house. You're going to want to spend in the kitchens and in the primary bathroom. Those are the three main areas that you're going to want to focus the majority of your budget on, especially in a downturn. You want that to give you a very big wow feature. So, how do we go from figuring out where our budget is and cutting our budget almost in half at times with some projects to still being able to style for a buyer and have them having the confidence that this is a well-built home? Here's the trick. Make sure that everything is done properly. You want the finish work to be perfection. This is where you're going to actually be a lot more critical than maybe you normally would be. You want the grout to be perfect. You want those grout lines to be perfectly straight or perfectly even. Everything needs to be to perfection because, especially in a downturn, buyers are quite a bit more critical on the house than they normally would be when you're in a seller's market and you have multiple buyers. So, this is where buyers can be more critical because you're not getting that flood of buyers coming in and that demand just isn't necessarily there. So, they're going to notice every little issue, every scratch, every dent. If the floor and the trim work doesn't match up and it has quite a bit of gaps, that's a huge issue. You want to make sure that you're leveling those floors before you're laying anything down so that they are perfectly flat. You're also going to want to make sure that you are really sticking to the natural palettes. You want it to feel timeless. You want it to be fresh and open. You want people to be able to walk in and say, oh, this just feels so calming and relaxing. This in designing in a downturn is not the time to take risks because what happens is that risk could really cost you a buyer. Whereas in a seller's market, you probably have another 5 lined up that are willing to buy it, that love that risk that you took. So really make sure that you are looking at every element of how a buyer is going to view it. Always in investing, that's kind of our biggest thing. We're always making sure that we're going in with the lens of who we are targeting for our market audience for the house, who's going to buy the home. So, what else can we do to really up the ante for our properties to stand out from somebody else's? Design for livability. You want to make sure that you are making the spaces, as I said before, feel move in ready, but you still want it to feel luxurious. A lot of times, using colors that are neutrals, more of those spa earthy tones, really makes a house feel elevated. Also, if you can, Adding in those vaulted ceilings. If you have a home that has lower ceilings, check in that attic. Can you easily just move the ceiling up? Or do you need to add any load bearing items, engineering, or things like that that actually would end up costing you quite a bit? Some of those kind of things could actually go a long way and really increase the value versus an accent wall that wouldn't increase the value of your home. So make sure that you're making market specific adjustments. So, how do we adapt our design to buyers in a curious or value driven market? A lot of times, buyers can say, well, I want to go in this with equity. And, as hard as that is, as an investor, we're sitting here thinking, well, we're not willing to give up any of our equity because that's our ROI. This is how we feed our families. This is how we make a living. This is how we survive in our life. So, how do you perceive to the buyers that the value is there? And that is really just with design. That is showing the buyers, look, this is our house and it's done to perfection. We've done everything. We've gone through this with a fine tooth comb, even as far as showing them photos in the listing of the timeline of everything that you've done and the work and effort that you've put in. That's where your value is to a buyer, is showing them that you took on this project for them to have their dream home and they didn't have to. So they need to also sometimes understand the work and the time that it took to design the home. And also sometimes, a lot of times buyers don't see that you took everything down to one wall, or you took it down to the studs and updated all the wiring, all the plumbing, all of that. So the house is basically new. That shows the buyers there's value there and that you really took the time and consideration to make sure that they have a solid, good home that is, when the market goes up, their home value is just going to skyrocket quite a bit more than the person next door who just threw lipstick on a pig. So adjusting for regional trends and price points, that's kind of a tricky one, where when you're adjusting for trends, unfortunately, what can happen is you can over design. And when you're working in a market that is designing in a downturn, you need to adjust that accordingly. You can still get a wow primary bathroom and not spend a crazy amount. You could spend $3 a square foot or less on a primary bathroom by doing porcelain tile, or by doing a different shower, or even by making wow features like one subway tile wall. You could do a whole subway tile bathroom in a primary bath if you have that lay perfect. Uh, if you do a herringbone lay or a chevron lay for your tile work, and you continue that all the way back along the vanity wall, that gives you kind of that difference of a wow feature, but it's not that much more expensive to do once you're in there putting all of the tile in. So that actually is a really big cost saver that still gives you a good wow feature. So here's the other common mistake that you really want to avoid during that downturn. I've kind of touched base on this a little bit. What you would like to do, so when you're designing for a downturn, really, really make sure that you are not over renovating for that neighborhood. Meaning, don't try to make it the most expensive house. Buyers are more savvy than ever before. And if you overpay for a house, overpay for the design, and you're trying to get top dollar in that area, sometimes that's not going to work because buyers don't always want the most expensive house. They want maybe more of the mid-price house. So you need to adjust your design to fit that mid-price. Again, that's all in finishes. Don't skimp in a downturn market on the things that matter, like electrical, plumbing, those types of things. Fix all of the issues. Make sure that the foundation is perfect, that the leveling is perfect. It's in the finish work that you really want to focus on when you're designing in a downturn, because that's what they're going to notice. Buyers already know that they can bring somebody in to do an accent wall. When you're in a seller's market, it's easy to do all of that stuff because buyers don't always necessarily want to do it themselves. But if they're looking to save money because the market is churning or they're not sure about where the economy is, then you want to design for that. You want to go a little bit more basic and make sure that you're not over designing. That is the most common mistake I think people make, is over designing and then not getting their money out of it. You want to spend the money again in those primary areas and on that curb appeal. Make sure that the finish work is really good, that your permitting is done, and that your contractor knows what he's doing. So that's one big common mistake, is over renovating and having to price the home too high. And then what's happening is you're stuck with a home that you're now paying holding costs on that is just sitting and becoming stale. And the last thing you want as an investor is a stale listing. So that's money out of your pocket. And next thing you know, you're behind on your project and now you're bankrupt. Okay, maybe not that extreme. You're probably not bankrupt. I mean, hopefully you're not bankrupt, but you get what I'm saying. It's very easy to lose your butt on a home and over design the property. Very easy. Very simple mistakes are made. So another mistake that's made that we've touched on a little bit is curb appeal. People that ignore the curb appeal and just clean it up, 9 times out of 10 are probably going to have a buyer that pulls up and drives away. When you're in a market that is not a seller's market and it's a neutral market or even a buyer's market, again, the curb appeal is what pulls them in and want to see what's inside, because they're like, wow, they did this on the outside. I can't wait to see what they've done on the inside. So really make sure you are not ignoring that curb appeal, especially when competition is high. You want to make sure that your house stands out with elegance. So, top 3 updates that every seller should prioritize in a shifting market. Curb appeal. Whether it's making the exterior of the house more exciting, adding brick, adding maybe a trim paint, adding a different door to the front, all of those things, more plants, adding a special walkway, lighting. Lighting is huge for exterior. Those are things that you're going to want to do when you're designing in a shifting market. The second thing that you're going to want to focus on is the kitchen. Basically, where the primary is going to be living. The kitchen is a big thing because that is the entertaining space. That's where people come over and they really showcase their home. And so you want that to feel special. The third area that you really want to not avoid when designing in a churning market would be the updates within the walls. And I know that it's not something that people see, but it's something that during inspection can make or break your contract. If there's a lot of little things that look like they were done halfway, then buyers think, ooh, this is not done properly. This wasn't done right. I'm moving on, because they have so many options to go to the next investor or the next builder or the next developer that did do it right. And they're going to get the buyer over you. So really make sure that you're finishing work and that all of the items that are of concern are done, and that they are done right and that they are done properly. A thing that really helps too that I've noticed is adding a warranty. If your house isn't new construction and it doesn't have already that new construction warranty, then provide a home warranty for those buyers. That adds an extra level of comfort that they know you're wanting to make sure that everything is done right. And that if something after they buy the home does go wrong, you are willing to make it right. That's a big deal. It gives buyers a very big feeling of comfort to understand that their developer cares and that they care about the home that they're living in. All of the homes that I do, I would live in myself. And if I can't do it that way, I'm not going to buy that property and make that investment because really at the end of the day, I wouldn't sleep well at night knowing that I shoved somebody in a home that was done just halfway. And if I wouldn't even put my own children to bed at night in that home, why would I sell it to somebody to do that? It's not ethically right. It's not morally right. So you really want to make sure that every house that you're doing with the mindset of, would I feel comfortable with my family living here? Regardless of if it's not in the price point that you would want your family to live in, take that away. Don't think like, well, I wouldn't live here because it's not big enough or it's, not nice enough or whatever. Build it to where you would feel comfortable, even if it was a rental or a place that you were going to Airbnb, whatever it is, you really want to build it with care and with proper ethics. Make sure you're getting those proper permitting done. A big thing like in Arizona, the first question is, was this home renovated and did it need permits? If it needed permits, you are liable to say yes or no on it needed permits and yes or no, I did or did not permit it. If you did not permit it, it opens you up for huge liability issues. It's one thing to not permit something like you're doing a facelift. You're changing out maybe a bathroom tile, floor, and cabinet. Okay, yeah, or painting or things like that. You're doing a facelift. That doesn't necessarily need permitting. But if you're moving walls, if you are moving gas lines, if you are moving water lines, electrical, you want to hire licensed people for that work because it's going to be done properly. And those licensed professionals are required by the IRC to warranty their work. And that's the work that you really want to make sure is warranted. So those are really all of kind of the things that you really want to make sure you're doing. I want to quickly touch base on how to stretch your money in design. This is actually kind of easy, guys. I know it sounds like, oh my God, I only got a budget for $100,000 and this house really needs $300,000 worth of work. How am I going to do this? Well, it's easy. All you're going to do is switch out the materials. Focus on where you want the money to go. Which is going to be, what do they see? So when you are budgeting for your design materials aspect, you want to say, okay, I can spend a little bit more money on the kitchen, but pull things back a little bit in the bathrooms where I can maybe change up the tile lay and go cheaper on the tile. Also, maybe adding carpet into the bedrooms that aren't the primary. In Arizona, you always want to do carpet, or you always want to do hardwood or laminate or some form of that in the primary bedrooms. Frankly, because most people in Arizona actually cannot stand carpet and it just gets so dirty and disgusting. I made the mistake actually in my primary to do carpet in my kids' playroom. And the only reason I did that is because it's literally right behind the kitchen and the family room. And I wanted it to be quieter because they were little. And I also was a little bit concerned when they were first learning how to walk that they would fall and hurt themselves or whatever. I was a helicopter mom. Actually, I still am. So whatever. Right? I mean, we all are, I guess. But anywho, so I put carpet down. big mistake. That was the biggest mistake. I should have never done that. I should have done the hardwood and laid out a massive thick rug, because the carpet now is so disgusting. I'm not kidding. I probably have it professionally cleaned once a week. It is so gross. I hate it. I cannot wait till we rip it out. But that's a big thing. You could easily save money by adding carpet in the bedrooms, the closets, the secondary bedrooms and closets. And even adding carpet into the primary closet would be okay. But those are kind of ways, using laminate versus engineered hardwood, sourcing out with wholesalers, using Facebook Marketplace or even Craigslist. I have found where people were building houses and they way overbought on the hardwood floors and they were just trying to get rid of it. So they were selling it for cheap, and it just so happened to be enough for my project. So those are kind of some easy ways that you can really design. It takes a little bit more work and effort to really focus on nailing down that budget and really finding where the good deals are. But it will really help you in the future for when the market does start to go up. Then what happens is you already have these tools of being able to design a really good product, and your ROI is going to skyrocket. So really, to kind of close things out, when you're designing in the downturn of a market, you are going to want to make sure that less is more. Meaning, make your design a little bit less. Don't add so many accents. Make it simple, elegant, classy. That's really what you're going to want to focus on. If you would like to learn more from me, you can watch me on Project RE, where I will be hosting quarterly seminars for everybody on how to navigate this market. So I hope you enjoyed Design to Sell, designing in the downturn. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you have a subject that you guys would like to talk about, please feel free to drop it in the comments, like it, post it, share it. Let all of your friends know that Design to Sell is the podcast to listen to. Thanks for listening to Design to Sell. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share. For more tips, inspiration, and behind the scenes content, follow us on Instagram at Caitlin_Morton_design, or visit us at www.caitlinmortondesign.com. Until next time, keep designing with purpose and selling with style.